Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 178. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the acclaimed writer and artist of The Wolf and I, Krysta Crawford. Krysta.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and get to talk to you today.
Oh, did you read that off a script too?
No. No, I just, improv. I have to talk to kids for a living every day. And so you never know what they're going to say to you. So you have to have something like ready to go.
Boom.
Otherwise they look at you like, are you real? You just become one of the grown-ups to them who just like doesn't know how to respond. But if you have a response ready to go for no matter what they say to you, like right. They're like, you're kind of cool.
You're kind of cool, yeah. So this is your fifth Kickstarter. Fourth Kickstarter. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. And this is
fifth if you count, like I helped a friend run a Kickstarter, but fourth of my own.
Okay, all right. And each one of your Kickstarters has been The Wolf and I. So you had Magic Rising, Tides of Truth. Magic Rising was the second one.
Magic Rising is the second one, yeah. So
right, okay.
Wolf and I was like self-titled issue 1. I had no idea. I was hoping that it would eventually become like each chapter or each issue, which I've self-titled, would have its own. But, starting at the beginning, I just big and bold Wolf and I to see if the dream even had a fighting chance.
Right. Okay. And they did. And this is your fourth one, and you've already excited. You've already hit your goal already.
Yes,
and
so exciting.
Yeah. So talk to us a bit about The Wolf and I. I'm really excited to and I've done my research. I listened to other interviews. I know all about Wolf and I, how it's been created. But for the sake of the viewers out there and also the podcast listeners that'll hear this later, give people a little bit of background on The Wolf and I.
Yeah, so Wolf and I is a fantasy adventure comic. It's aimed for preteens, teens, and young adults, and it follows the lives of our two main characters, Sophia and Violet, who grew up thinking they were normal girls, told fairy tales as little kids, and are now branching out, going to college, living their life when strange occurrences start happening. And they're faced with this choice of like accepting that reality may not be all that they're told it is, and that the fairy tales they were told as children may be more reality than story. And so they go on this epic adventure where they have to decide who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, and a discovery of themselves, who they are, these magical powers to start manifesting in them. And they create this friendship with unlikely creatures. One is a half cat, half owl shapeshifter who helps them escape to the land of Krayweth. We call it a meowl. So they escape to the land of Krayweth, where they're forced with this destiny that they were prophesized to help save the land from the wolf shapeshifters from taking over. But issue 4 really delves into Violet's past as she learns that the leader of the wolf shapeshifters is actually her father, and that her mother had been kidnapped when she was little, and so she had taken her to the human world to protect her. And so now she's got this moral dilemma of, who am I? I'm half the bad guy, half the good guy. Like, where does the story go from here? So it takes a really exciting turn in issue 4.
Yeah. So it's very. I'm following it up, and I see that issue 1 came out in early 2020. Issue 2 came out in late 2020, and then you worked on this next issue. Issue 3 came out in early 2022, and no, late 20.
Late
it's delivered.
Yeah, delivered in 20. I was afraid. We finished it like right before the holidays, and I was really afraid of it getting lost in the mail with everybody else shipping things in the mail. And I wanted stuff to arrive in pristine condition, because whether they're buying this for their teenagers themselves or as a collectible item, the last thing I wanted is for it to either get lost or get damaged in the mail. And so I made a decision to ship it later, after the holidays, so that everything could arrive on time and not get lost and not get damaged.
So, giving a synopsis of the storyline, let's talk a little bit about you as the comic creator. I am amazed that you have a full-time job, you're a parent, and you were still able, within the span of 2 years, put out 4 issues so far.
Yeah.
Advice. Give us advice on how you do this.
Black tea for the win. I will say, writing and art is my anti-stress. Wolf and I was created originally. I wrote the story to be a novel, like to be a prose novel. And I started writing Wolf and I 10, 15 years ago. Probably closer to 15 at this point. And I wanted it to be a published book, but I got 75% of the way through the book, and I was constantly like changing things. My worst critic, I was like, well, what about this? And what if I change this? And would people like this more? Would this make sense? So then I'd go back and I'd scrap a chapter and add a chapter, and then I'd have to make other tweaks. And I just never got it to a point where I'm like, all right, let's like publish it or send it to, an editor to get published. And so finally, 2020 was coming upon us, and it was my big year. I had worked 9 years. I had been getting my doctorate, and I was like, let's, hit 2020 with a big bang. Little did I know that COVID was going to happen. And I was like, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to put out my first comic. And if I'd been doing art shows as an artist, doing variant covers for other comics, doing a lot of indie art and a lot of popular fan art in the Comic-Con world to help pay my way through, my schooling. And so I was like, why don't I turn Wolf and I into a comic? I do the art, the story's already written. I just need to figure out how to combine the two together. And so that's kind of where Wolf and I was born and introduced in the beginning of 2020. And it's all been uphill since then. It really fueled me that, putting out issue 1, people really liked it. So it gave me that energy to put out issue 2. People still liked it. It grew. So then we worked on issue 3. And so I've got a lot of the story. So now it's just putting that artwork together. I have brought on a flatter, which has sped things up. But basically, I go see patients during the day. I come home, spend time with my kids, and then you have your mom or dad time. It's like after the kids go to bed, and then you get to work on what you want to work on. And so I split that 33 between baking, reading, and drawing. It depends on what the mood is.
Now, I'm curious, looking at your artwork, is this all digital, or is this something you do kind of like pen on paper and then scanned in? How does this work for you?
So issue 1 was a lot of pencil scanned in and then digital drawn on top. So I did digital inking, digital coloring. Issues 2, 3, and 4, just for ease of traveling and working during lunch breaks and, working at hockey games when we're, cheering for the, while my daughter's playing hockey. The next issues have really transitioned more into a digital format, which at times I miss a lot of that pencil to the paper, original sketching, but it does ease for traveling purposes, not to carry my entire tackle box of drawing equipment.
Right. So I'm curious as well. It says you mentioned that you have someone doing the flats for you. Is there anything as you're looking at as you want to make sure, because I did my research, you want to do at least 20 issues. So
you did
is there something else that you're looking at that you'd like to farm out later, like lettering or anything else? Or
I don't know, because the style that I work in is very ADHD chaotic.
Right.
And so for me, it was even hard to let go of the flatting. I eventually got to a point where I brought in somebody to do the flatting who was a close friend. That was kind of I wanted to support him. He's an artist full time. He has kids. So I wanted a way to give him to his art.
Right.
but also like help me not go crazy, because flatting drives me literally insane. And he can get something done in like 20 minutes that would take me like 4 hours, and I'd be pulling my hair out. But like the rest of the process just is so magical to me. Like I love drawing it, inking it, getting the flats back from him, and like making it like how it is in my head, like applying that to the paper, and then getting to position the lettering and the wording exactly how I want. I don't know. It would be weird to like let go of that.
Right. Right. Now, I'm curious as well from the world building perspective, because you said you wrote this book, you wrote it as a novel, you wrote it as a prose, which kind of made it easier for you. You didn't have to then put it in a comic book script and send it out to an artist.
Yeah.
So you're saving money there, which is good when you're being the writer and
especially
the
when
illustrator.
you're paying off your student loans one comic at a time.
Right. Yeah. So when you originally wrote the story,
Yes.
were you based off of a kind of hero's journey atmosphere where you kind of had a character in mind, or did you create a world first and then made a character inside the world that you created?
So a little bit of 50-50. So I had these two characters. It's always been two characters. Like I've got my one that's a little more pseudo main, but the story's always really concentrated on them. And then like a chapter would be from one perspective, a chapter from the other perspective, a chapter with them together when they were having, together. And so like it started on her journey, but once they got to the land of Crayweth, all of a sudden their story kind of just paused in my head, and this whole land kind of erupted. It reminds, like in my head, I remember thinking about, those books that you used to open, and as you're opening them, they start popping and popping, and like the castle like pops open when you like get it fully open, but it's like slowly opening at one time. That's kind of how in my head when I was like, okay, they're going to go to this magical world. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, the potentials. And I was like, okay, so they could go through this portal and land here. But then like, this is this magical creature, and there's got to be a river, and there's got to be a mountain, and there's these caves. And then, there's going to be these creatures that live here, and mermaids that are here, but they can like transport through the streams, and the sand's going to be like, purple, and the water's going to be amethyst. And I was like, and then, what about this? And what if we have a tribe of these people? And so it really just kind of evolved while the story was just kind of sitting there, as the characters are like sitting at the main entrance, like, wait, what do we do now? And so I have a lot of like side stories, like scribbled down on scrap paper, like stacked next to me in my office, that are like, okay, I could do like a mini series or a short story or a poem.
Right. No, because you've created such a rich world, is there any possibility that you maybe farm out, saying, here's an idea, look for someone to write a plot for you, and then, or are you holding this world still close to you because either it hasn't fully evolved yet, or you just don't want to, you're not looking at having somebody else tell those stories for you?
I wouldn't be opposed if somebody wanted to do, branch out to other stories. I've had a lot of people reach out and be like, oh my gosh, I love like this character. Are you going to write more about her? Like, I want to know her backstory. I want to know what happens like later, or like, where do the mermaids come from? How do you know this one's in charge? Like, and I was like, oh, there's not enough to tell like in one like comic. Like that's like a whole nother series. I also have a friend who has a fairy comic book herself. And a lot, and while the story's completely different and the land's completely different, there's a lot of like elements, in fantasy elements that cross over. So they've approached me like, hey, how would you feel about doing like a mini crossover series? Because your person she can transport between worlds through these magical portals. And they're like, what if your character came to ours? Or what if our, your character, ours came to yours, like stumbled through this portal? Could we do a mini series? And I was like, that might kind of be a neat idea. And so the potential's definitely out there, but with having at least 20 issues under my belt to think about, like, it's hard to be like, okay, if I put this on the back burner for 6 to 12 months and focused on this, how much further is it going to push out finishing Wolf and I? And, I know people are excited to keep reading the next issues.
Right. I mean, yeah, and you have a pretty active Etsy page. You have a pretty active Twitch stream, and so what advice would you give to other comic creators? Because before you were doing a lot of fan art, so and that's how
Mhm.
you first kind of built up your audience a bit. And what advice would you give to comic creators to kind of make that switch? And how do you get into other forms of social media other than the standard
Yeah.
Twitter,
You
Instagram
know,
stuff?
I will say like every social media has its different benefit. You will find a lot of people on Instagram who like your art, but they'll like look at it, like it, and they'll scroll. They won't actually engage with it.
Mm,
And I feel like Twitter's very like big supportive on like Kickstarters and indie comics and kind of that stuff. But I don't, so there's a niche with everything.
right.
Before Wolf and I was created, I really worked on building up my social media presence, building up my platform. And so I had a lot of people who, were there for the fan art, but I built up people who were there to support me as an artist. And I think that's the big thing,
Mm,
building up your supporters who support your art, your ideas, and show them that you love your character. It's really hard to have somebody, who's loved Pikachu their whole life, or, iconic, like big fan characters, Sailor Moon, Disney
right.
princesses, and to get them to fall in love with something new. And nobody's going to fall in love with a character that the creator is not head over heels for, who can't say what they love about their character, what they hate about their character. You want somebody to be able to associate with your character, to feel for them. I'm a big reader. I read like 30 to 70 books a year, depending on like if it's a 300 to an 800 page book, or if it's, digital audio.
Wow.
And there are books that I know the first 10 pages that I read, if I'm going to be staying up till 2 a.m. drinking my black tea to finish this book. Or there's books that I'll read and I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever going to love this book. And, I'm not a big quitter. So there's very few books I haven't finished reading, but there's been quite a few books where I've read the whole thing and I'm like, this took me like a week to read, that it should have only taken me 3 hours to read. And I absolutely hated every minute of it. And I did not feel for the character. I like couldn't get into it. I couldn't see like why the author loved this story. And so,
Right.
and that's the other thing. There's a comic for everybody. There's a creator for everybody. Just because you love your character and your story doesn't mean everybody else will, but it doesn't mean nobody will.
Mm,
And so it's finding your people and finding the people that have like cross interests.
right. So that's a good example. So, because your comic is it's a, as you say, it's a teen comic. It's a PG, or is it PG-13? What would
It's
you call it?
PG-13. I
Okay.
call it like a teen / young adult. It's very young adult themed. It's very like
Mm,
they're college students. There is some violence. There's some teeth and slashes and blood, like, when the wolves and the other creatures like are fighting
right.
each other. So it's not like let's go to grandma's. This is like old school grim fairy tales.
Right.
There's some ugliness and some happiness and some, real life decisions you have to put yourself in. So it's not an all ages book, but it would be one that, somebody who's a teen, 13 and up would enjoy. And it's somebody, women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, men in their 20s, 30s, 40s. If you like fantasy, you like adventure, it's got a little bit of everything in it.
So I'm really curious, as an artist, that
Mm-hmm.
did you, as you're telling your story and the story went off in a direction, towards the direction of having to draw a character, did you have to teach yourself either like how to draw, a fish, or how to draw an animal, that you had to practice first before you put on paper, that
Oh,
you
yes.
didn't? Okay.
For sure. Going from prose and fan art to doing comics was a huge like challenge, because I was used to doing like pinup style, like variant covers, or
Right.
very like classic pose fan art. And I was used to drawing like certain, like, females is mostly what I drew. But then as I was progressing through, and like, you know, I had male characters in my story, and I had these animals and trees and buildings, and it wasn't just all like, you can't just put a pinup on every page and call it a comic. It was, you know, dynamic poses and different facial expressions. So there were many, many hours of like, and still a lot with issue 1 and 2. And then things got more fluid as I was drawing the same characters over and over. The art style really kind of pulled together. But it, yeah, every time I introduced a new character or a new creature, and it was a lot of looking at like real life creatures and looking at reference drawings of magical creatures to really get an idea for how they looked, how they moved, how they flowed, so that the panels would flow well together.
Right. Now, and as you're building the you know, the world itself, how did you kind of create, you know, like the magic system in here? Is it more, is it structured? Did you have to put in rules as you're writing this, or is it more, you know, based off of, you know, the will of the character? How were you able to balance that from the narration perspective?
So it's a little chaotic. It's like neutral chaos. So the two characters have very different powers. The one character, Sophia, who can speak to, she's a spirit mage, and so she can control like the wind element and speak to spirits and kind of use like a telekinesis spirit power. And so you see a lot of these like wispy, swirly, like, you know, little wind funnels as she's starting to use her powers. And then Violet, who's the half fae, half wolf, at the beginning, she has just a lot of this like uncontrolled kinetic energy. You know, in one of the scenes, like she puts her hands up to like protect herself because the wolf is about to jump on her. And her like just natural like buildup of adrenaline causes her power to kind of push out and push the wolf away from her. So you can see, and then as they're learning to use their powers in issue 3 and issue 4, you can see them kind of struggling to understand, you know, feeling inside themselves and seeing like what their powers do. And in issue 4, it really delves more into her wolf side of like what powers did she get from the fae and what powers did she get from the wolf. And as a fae, she has a lot of, you know, the elemental and the healing, and just this like built up internal energy, like using the force around her.
And now, I think you were saying in a previous interview about like the story was about 75% done. Is this, do you have an idea now? Do you have it all outlined up to the end now?
For the comic, yeah. So I have pretty much up to 20 issues. And so like there's like a finality point for book 1. So the story itself is completed. So, you know, if we went, or if, you know, something happened, like there is a story that can be finished. I also have an unknowable amount of side stories that have stacked up on napkins and, you know, back of receipts, and it's quite comical, and this will probably be a lifelong project, that's for sure.
No, because one of the aspects of it is just from the marketing piece of it, and you love, I know, like it, like the swag part of the thing. Now, I'm really curious about this. What parts that you have in your Kickstarter, and we can look at that now. What parts of the Kickstarter? Because you have enamel pins, you got stickers. How much of this is you as a fan of the story? You said, I just want this, and I hope other people want it too.
100% of it.
Is it?
I was like, I love enamel pins. I'm always collecting them. In fact, I was just sitting here looking at some of them that I have. There's a comic I just got in the mail a couple months ago that I supported, an indie comic, and they had a Lost at Sea enamel pin. Oh, I don't know if my camera will focus.
There we go.
And so this was really fun. So I've got that one. I've got some other ones. They're not up here. They're in my pin collection. But I just, it's like the Disney kid in me. I was like, I want indie like enamel pins, and eventually one day I want to make a Leatherman jacket and just have like the whole back be indie comic pins.
So what's your, because I know, because every Kickstarter you've come out with, you've had an enamel pin, correct?
I have. So that this one I kind of had two on because I wanted to have diversity in the mermaids, since there's like 20 mermaids. 3 of them show up in issue 1. You see a couple others in issue 4. And so I did 2 color choices this time, but the wolf was, you know, for issue 1. The meow was for issue 2. The moon symbol, which you start to see, it's like a foreshadowing symbol. So if you've read the previous issues, you kind of see it occurring in different places until like the final reveal comes up about it. And then the mermaids were a big character that were introduced last issue in issue 3, and they play a big role in issue 4, you know, helping guide this troop of friends to the capital of Krayweth. And so, you know, on their journey, you know, the mermaids are helping them. They help battle for them. They help fight, you know, the wolves against them. And so that's why a lot of my covers were mermaids, because they played such an iconic role in issue 3, and then continue to play such a role in issue 4.
So I'm also curious. So if you had those that we always, you know, we have creators that listen and fans of the genres listen, and what advice would you give to a comic creator who says, hey, Krysta, this is great. This is amazing. I'm thinking about doing a Kickstarter. I've been holding on to this book. I'm not sure if when I'm gonna do it. What's your advice to them on add-ons, for instance?
Ooh, so this has been something, you know, and every time I've learned something new, it's a constant learning experience. I'm even learning with this one, and it's kind of fluctuated too with the economy and what people are looking for, what people can afford. There are a lot of people who like add-ons for, you know, collecting previous issues. So that's a big one with this one. It's issue 4. So I have a lot of people that are like, I've never heard of Wolf and I want to jump in, but I want to know what happened in the previous issues. So I have a digital and a physical copy of issues 1 through 3 that people can pick up at a discounted price as an add-on. Then there's people that are like, I've been a long-term fan of Wolf and or I'm a new fan of Wolf and I want to represent. So I have like a t-shirt, I have a pin. But what I would say to people who, you know, if you're a comic creator, the biggest thing is think about, you know, don't have so many add-ons, because it's a little overwhelming to like pick your option and then all of a sudden you're faced with like 100 add-ons, and people are like scrolling and they're like, oh my God, I don't know, I just want this comic, but you know, I might want an add-on, but like there's so many choices. So that was one comment that I got back, is they're just, you know, not to have too many add-ons, because sometimes you just get like walking down Artist Alley, you just kind of get blinders on because there's just so much, and sometimes you might miss out on something that you really want. Make sure that your add-ons, you have a shipping plan for your add-ons. One of the things I did last Kickstarter, which was really cool, and people loved them. I had great feedback on them. And I personally, this was one that I like made for myself. And I was like, I don't know if anybody's even going to want this, but I made Wolf and I whiskey glasses. My husband and I are big like whiskey connoisseurs. And I was like, you know, I've been wanting to buy a new set of whiskey glasses. Why don't I learn how to etch on glass? And so I handmade like a dozen Wolf and I whiskey glasses. And I said, if they don't sell, then I have a cool party cup for when people come over to my house. And if they sell, like people have this cool, unique like item that, you know, I made once and probably won't make again, because it was a lot of work, but it's just so unique. But the problem is, like, I made them and I got so excited and people are ready to buy them. And then I was like, oh, how do I ship this with their comic? Like I could ship it myself because it came in like a little box and I could put another little box, but then I was like, well, how do I ship this thing and a comic but not worry about the comic getting dented from having this other box in a box, but not having it in a box that could get crushed and the whole glass breaks? Because there are these little, I don't have one on me right now, but like Glencairn cups, they're like bigger than a shot glass but smaller than a water glass, and they're fragile. They're like thin, you know, because they're made for sipping whiskeys in, and they're like bell curve shaped, so they're not even like that thick water glass. Yeah. So that was kind of a challenge. So just have a plan and make sure that when you're shipping it, it's going to ship securely and get there like in good condition.
Yeah.
Or just don't ship breakable items.
So what is something that you were able to, that you learned in your first few Kickstarters that you wished, now that you're doing, that you wished you knew before?
Be a little bit more prepared before I launch. The first one, I was like, yeah, I've got this comic idea and I draw art and I'm going to just like put this book out and it's going to be great. And I'm going to launch it. You know, and I've got this comic book that I've created. And then, but I didn't like schedule interviews. I didn't post on social media about it. I didn't have an email list. Like I just was like, started a Kickstarter. And then I posted on Instagram. I was like, look, I have a Kickstarter. And I'm really surprised it even funded in the first place. Thank goodness. Thank goodness for family and friends. And it did much better than I thought it was going to. And I mean, I did have a little bit of social media presence. So like that did help. Right. But since then, I've really like started an email list. I've ran the like pre-sign up for the launch notification a month or two before the Kickstarter even goes live. And so, you know, having that under my belt, having, you know, interviews scheduled so I can not only talk and like tell people like, this is my story. This is why I love it. You know, this is why I think you should support Wolf and I. But also just to reach other people outside of my bubble and outside of my friends' bubbles. Because I feel like you live in a bubble and then you have your friends who like are like here and here with their bubble. But there's hundreds of people that will never see your posts ever unless you branch out and continue branching out. And even, you know, even with the following I have, I mean, you've seen it. I have a big social media following, you know, but I'll post, and of my 8,000 Facebook people, 50 people will see my post and like 5 will like it, 10 will like it. You know, followers on Twitter, I'll get like 5 people to like something of 2,000 people. And that's really frustrating as a creator to know you have people following and who want to see your posts, but who don't get to see them because of the algorithms.
Right. Right. I'm really excited also, as we mentioned, to talk about your pledge levels. So you do have on here as an add-on, you do have an add-on, or do you have a pledge level where people can have a catch-up tier?
So both. I have a digital and I have a physical, like 1 through 4, but I also have it as an add-on because I offered 7 variant covers this time. One of the things I really like, I know it got a little overboard. So my plan was to have 3, possibly 4 max, because last time I think I had 5 or 6 and that felt like a ton. And so I was like, all right, I've got like my 3 covers. And then one other person reached out and said, hey, you know, I still owe you a cover, so here's your cover I did for you. And I was like, oh, okay, so now I have 4. And then all of a sudden, I had 3 different individuals reach out to me who were like, hey, I know you reached out like 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago for me to do a cover for your comic book. I'm now available. And I was like, okay, 7 it is. Which, you know, in hindsight 2020, I'm looking back and I'm like, wow, there's like a lot to choose from. And maybe it would have been wiser to split them up between 1 or 2 issues. And I did, in fact, save 2 people who reached out to me because it was going to be 9. And I was like, look, like, I just, this is a lot. And so it's twofold. I like it. I love to see my characters through other people's eyes. I love to see that unique artwork. You know, I'm a big comic collector. I liked variant covers. I like having something unique to put on my wall. And eventually we'll have every cover of Wolf and I that has ever been created, like up in a, you know, in my future office. Instead of clothes hanging behind me, we'll have a mirage of Wolf and I covers. Right. But I think, I wanted an option to do like a 1 through 3 catch-up tier for somebody who wanted to read the story, but who also wanted to pick up like a specific variant cover. So they wanted Steph Wilson's variant cover because they love Steph Wilson and they like his art and they wanted his art for their like wall once they finished reading it. But they wanted to read the story too, or they liked, you know, Ryan Kincaid, but they wanted to read the story. And so that's why I had both options. They come out to the same price. But it, you know, kind of gives some flexibility depending on what people wanted to do. Right.
So you have, you know, you're looking at you got your digital one for $6. You got your standard one for $10. You you have a $12 one where it's a blank sketch cover, and that's basically, as you said, that's for artists, right?
Yeah, and it's on a really nice, I went with a higher quality sketch cover paper, which is why it's a little bit more expensive. Because one of the biggest things I've heard from a lot of artists is like the sketch cover stock is so thin, it bleeds through the minute you like touch markers to it. And so I experimented with a lot of different covers, and this is the one that I finally came like, great reviews, people like it, multiple mediums can be worked on it, and so it's good for variety no matter how thick or deep you want your colors to be.
Right. And then we get into then your other pledge levels is the $20. That's, you have your list of your $20 pick,
my variants.
Your variant
pick
covers.
Up cover for variants. So I have standard like non-shiny covers, and then for $30 they can get the metallic foil version of the covers. And so let me see here. I've got two. So the metallic foils, these are, I take it out so you can see it better. It's shiny in the bag. So this is like the metallic foil. This one's on a specialty foil. So this one's like a lava. The other ones are going to be on silver just because they're so much more detailed. And this one is just on like the silver rainbow. This one is actually a gemmed edition. So there's real Swarovski crystals that have been put onto the covers. I know it's kind of hard to see in the camera. And it is authenticized. So you get a certificate of authenticity. And so that is one of the tiers that's available.
Wow. Now, this is the first time I've actually interviewed somebody that actually has gems on their cover. Like, where did that idea come from? Did you get that?
It's magical. It's magical. I wanted it to sparkle. Actually, no, I will say I borrowed the idea from a friend of mine who does comic covers with crystals on them.
Really?
And so we have a jeweler we know that actually like deals in crystals, and so she hand tacks them onto the cover. She's got her own shop. She's got a certificate that you get that comes with authenticity. So it's pretty neat. It's nothing you can get graded, but it definitely is a cool wall piece to have like a metallic cover with like gems on it.
Right. Have you seen people show up at shows with your comics, like Preston, like a CGC thing?
I've had a couple, and I actually am getting in 2 weeks. I submitted some last September that are still waiting to be graded, which is kind of like really like daunting. I'm like, they finally got accepted, so I'm like, okay, maybe I'll get them in 4 months then. But I did something really unique at Phoenix Comic Con. I did a Phoenix Comic Con exclusive because all but one artist who's ever done a variant cover for me was going to be at Phoenix. And so I had them all sign. I did a limited of 10 run, and I had them sign 2 of the 10, had everybody sign it. I sent them both to be graded. So they just got accepted, and I should get them in 2 weeks, which I'm super excited about. So I'm keeping one, and then I'm debating it to sell or auction and give away the other one. So we'll figure out.
Wow. All right. And so, talk to us a bit about the Mermaid Trove. What's the Mermaid Trove?
I grew up with Peter Pan and Little Mermaid and just mermaids galore, reading about them. And so the mermaids appear in issue 3 once they once the girls get to the land of Krayweth, and they're faced with the wolves who kind of sneak up and start fighting them. And of course, the girls are untrained. Their powers are very new. They're trying to use them. And so these mermaids get called by the Anastasia, who's the meow shapeshifter, and they come and basically help fight the girls off. And then they're basically escort them to the land of the capital of Krayweth. And so a lot of my covers feature mermaids, and we launched in May to really kind of push the whole mermaid theme, just to make it fun. Right. If you're going to make it magical, throw meowls, throw mermaids, throw mages in there, and make it magic. Right.
And so there you go. Through the Mermaid Trove, you actually have all the metallic covers. Is that correct?
So I do. So the Mermaid Trove is going to be all of the covers that have mermaids on them, and they're all going to be in metallic. And then you're also going to get both mermaid pins with that in the mail. And so this is like for size. This is how big. So they're pretty decent sized pins. They're about 1 3/4 inch tall.
Right.
The mermaids themselves, oh, it's like way too shiny here, have glitter in their tails, and then so does the meowl. The moon's all metal, and then the wolf is all matte, but they're all
Okay.
hard metal enamel pins.
Wow. Okay. And so then talk to it. And so that's for $135. That's not bad.
So you kind of
And
get the pins for free with that one.
exactly. That's actually a better deal. So, but then let's get into the Dragon Horde, all the shinies for $220.
Yeah, so this is for my collectors. I have one or two people who followed Wolf and I who they just want it all, and so this is my like gift to them, so that instead of like picking everything individually, they can just have every single cover on metallic, and then they get like one or two covers for free, kind of all bundled together.
That's true, but and exactly. So this is looking at it this way. This is actually a really good deal because you're only it's one shipping cost, so
it is
right. Wow, yeah, that's amazing. You already have a backer for that too, and then you have the ultimate collector's package.
So I went a little crazy here. I wanted to like offer something like, you know, if you're a big fan of Wolf and I, or you're just a collector of comics and you want to have something that not everybody else has, it's got all the covers, all the backstory, it's got all the pins. I don't even remember what I put all in here, stickers and bookmarks and prints and cups, and you know, I wanted to make it fun. It's one of those, like, if no one backs it, it's not a big deal, but if they back it, like, they'll probably get more than what's on the list there.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. And you have the estimated delivery of August 2022. So
yes. So time's a ticking, that's for sure. So August to early September is my goal. I unfortunately, with issue 1, this was something I learned, is it gets really hot here during the summer, like close to 117, 120 degrees in Arizona. And I shipped my first book, and you know, some of them got shipped in the summer, and I had about 5 or 6 come back where they had actually melted the plastic bags and boards that protected the comic. Had melted because they had put them in their comic books, or they put their comic books inside of the bags and boards, and you know, it's 120 outside, and if the sun's beating directly on these big metal mailboxes, it gets like 160, 200 degrees inside those. And so the plastic just, and so I really like did not want to ship in the middle of summer again and have that happen. Because I mean, I ate the cost. I shipped them brand new comics. I waited a couple of weeks to let it cool down. And so depending on what the weather is, it'll either be late August, early September.
Right. Okay. That's not bad. So this is, you know, really exciting. Congratulations on hitting your goal. I think that's amazing. And it's exciting to see that you have some new backers, because they've backed some of so it shows that every time you're doing this, you're getting new readership coming in.
Yes. It's been really exciting because I've had like new people that have joined, people that have seen me on shows, you know, and then I've got like my people that have been with me since issue 1 that are like, I'm ready. When's issue? I've had a few people be like, okay, I backed issue 4. When's issue 5 coming? I'm like, you don't even have issue 4 yet. And so that's, you know, just, it's really exciting. It makes me super happy. And whether we beat what issue 3 made or not, it just makes me excited that we have funded that another issue is coming to life in the Wolf and I series. And this is the very first time we've actually gotten Project We Love on Kickstarter. So over the moon happiness when I got that email.
Right. Yeah, that is that. Yeah, I did notice that too. So congratulations on that as well. So
thank you.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Krysta, for coming on. And listen, we got to talk again when issue 5 comes out. So
sign me up. I'll be here. Right. It's been a great time talking. Parting, do you want to hear the Wolf and I blockbuster pitch?
Yeah, sure. Let's hear it.
All right. This is my like forever, no matter if you pick up issue 1 or 20, if you want to get in, if this was my, you know, coming out spring blockbuster hit, like this would be the scene. You know, the scene would be dark. There'd be trees, the mist would be rolling in, and you'll see somebody staring up the moon and the wolf howling in the background. In a land slowly overtaken by darkness, eyes peer into every nightmare. Tread carefully, take heed, and beware, for creatures crawl throughout the night. Secrets of history shall come to light. Internal powers before unknown. Choices are made, worlds are shown. Two heroines are faced with a choice to band with friends and unite their voice. Against this evil they must stand, for the fate of Crayweth lays in their hands.
Wow. That's, yeah, see, I got chills. See, listening to that. See, wow. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Krysta. And like I said, congratulations again. And I look forward to chatting with you again. All right, Krysta, I'm gonna do our intro and then we'll jump right into it.
Awesome.
All right, here we go. All right. And all right, yeah, Krysta Crawford, you can't mess that up.
You can't mess it up. It's got
No.
a nice chime to it.
Okay, good. All right, yeah, all right. Just checking to be sure. So you'd be like, oh no, the T is silent or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm like,
that's like the K is silent, the T is silent. Instead of Crawford, the C makes the S sound, so it's Crawford.
That's right. I thought so. That's why I wanted to check to make sure.